funding his campaign to a large extent. And, for some reason, I don't see as much hand-wringing about that. So in any case, it's also, look, Elon's a billionaire. He's got a lot of government contracts. He's got a lot to gain also from having very cozy relationship with the president of the United States. So that part should not go unremarked upon either.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too, to look at his PAC, the America PAC. I was just in Pennsylvania this weekend, and there were actually quite a lot of ads that I saw that were done by that America PAC. So that's direct evidence of the impact that he's having. Trump also did a "as I was saying," which is when he was shot at that exact moment when he was pointing towards a graph and a chart, the chart that he credits with saving his life. Let's take a listen to how that went.
Pennsylvania, we love Pennsylvania. And as I was saying, oh, I love that. I love that chart. I love that graph.
I love that chart. I love that graph. So that was it was a big moment there for the crowd, especially. Like I said, I was in Pennsylvania. I'm telling you, the number of political ads that people are dealing with over there, my God, God bless you. It's also, all of these signs everywhere. You can tell people are jazzed up, whether it's Trump, whether it's Kamala, whichever area you in and which way it tilts, they are huge. It also is in the context, these rallies of Donald Trump and now the media strategy by Kamala. There's some really interesting insight into how both of these people are spending their last month of the campaign. Let's put this up there on the screen. So as Crystal alluded to, Kamala Harris has a massive disparity in money and her ability to spend on traditional advertising in the lead up to election. She has placed $263 million in ads between the end of the convention and October 4th, 2.5 times as much as the $109 million spent by Donald Trump. She has more staff, more volunteers, a larger surrogate operation, more digital advertising, more sophisticated smartphone-based organizing program, extra money for extraneous bells and whistles typically reserved for corporate product launches and professional sports championships. A, quote, Harris drone light show recently flew over Philadelphia. Her rally attendees often get light-up pop-up bracelets. There are even plans in the works for a late October infomercial to air on swing state broadcast networks. The scale of her financial advantage larger than anything Trump faced in his previous 2 races for the White House. Now, look, money isn't everything. As they accurately point out, Hillary outspent him massively back in 2016. But if we put this next one up on the screen, just to show people the scale of it, the scale is genuinely unprecedented. 2020, Joe Biden outspent him significantly. So did Hillary. But this time, we're talking orders of magnitude larger. To bypass that, what Trump and his allies are looking to is to get earned media and traditional, like the way that they really always have, is capture public attention, get billions of dollars in free advertising, control the conversation. And he also has some incumbency bias as well, considering he was the president previously, and everybody in America not only knew his name before 2016, but they definitely know his name these days. So that's a bit of a difference in the strategy. Kamala trying to spend her way there, try and get herself across the finish line on Election Day.
Yeah, I mean, that chart really kind of blew my mind, to be honest with you, because my recollection of 2016 as well was like, oh, Hillary outspent him by a ton. And then you look at this and it's dwarfed by the amount that Kamala is spending against him. And these totals reflect the Harris campaign and the DNC versus the Trump campaign and the RNC. Now, they are obviously not the only players in the election. You also have these outside super PACs. And there, the Trump campaign, this is another way that they're different from the Harris campaign. They're more reliant on these outside groups. This was a similar strategy that we saw with like Ron DeSantis, where he really outsourced a lot of what was even traditional campaign, like in-house work, to outside PACs. Didn't work out that well for him, but doesn't mean it's not going to work for Donald Trump. But even when you factor in those outside groups, you still have a huge disparity on the Democratic side. So according to this article, when advertising by outside groups is added to the candidates' campaigns, Democrats spent about $225 million more on paid presidential advertising between the end of the Democratic convention and October 4th. That's about 1.8 times the amount that was spent by Republicans. So, we're going to have a real live experiment here about how much money matters in presidential politics. Now, based on the political science and my own, sense of how elections go, money matters a lot, but it matters the more, like the further you go down the ticket, the more that it matters. So you drop $1 million into some local city council race, yeah, that's gonna matter a lot. Or at the congressional level, it matters a lot more, but since you have just like less national media attention, less ability to get earned media. Here you have in Donald Trump, someone who is obviously a known commodity who can get attention and eyeballs whenever he wants to without having to spend a dime. So is it determined? It's certainly not determinative here how much of an impact it has. Even that is yet to be seen. And then the other thing they point out in this article as well is that, Kamala's running more of a traditional campaign. They've got field offices across the country. They've built out this huge volunteer base. They're going door knocking and doing all the traditional field work that you associate with a presidential campaign and campaigns at all levels. Trump is really not as focused on that. He is more focused on the earned media, on the podcast sphere, on generating attention through his own sort of, words, deeds, antics, et cetera. And I think the other thing to comment on is he used to have such a prolific grassroots fundraising base, but he's been hitting that list for almost a decade now. And I think there's also some sense of like that base is sort of worn out. And it's not just Trump that's been hitting them up for money. It's a whole sphere of Trump-aligned grifters who are trying to sell them, gold coins and, you build the wall crap, the whole universe of Republican candidates also who are trying to hit that list, who are trying to get money out of them for their campaigns as well. And so I also think that they've really kind of burnt that list down, and there isn't as much grassroots enthusiasm. When Kamala came in, Biden had zero grassroots enthusiasm ever. When Kamala came into the race, she had a genuine surge of enthusiasm on the Democratic side. They've brought in a lot of new grassroots donors who hadn't given to the party before. And so you couple that with the fact that we're about to show you in the economy block, she's gone in this whole like Wall Street charm offensive to try to suck up as much Wall Street cash as she can. And you've got the makings of, we'll see whether it's a successful presidential campaign, but it is certainly a very successful fundraising campaign.
My inkling is I don't think money matters all that much past a certain level in a presidential race, especially one where Trump is such a polarizing figure. I think this probably matters a lot more in congressional and in Senate races, door knocking, etc. But just the reason why people vote for president is not the same in terms of, oh, somebody showed up and knocked on my door. A lot of that is very old school stuff. I especially think in a media environment like today, especially also why people vote. There's a lot of negative voting, as in I'm voting for this person to prevent the other side. I don't think you necessarily need to be touched by organizing. But look, I could be totally wrong. Clearly they do spend hundreds of millions of dollars. They don't do it for no reason. It yields something. To what? I'm not sure yet. I'm pretty sure it's like the Coca-Cola experiment, where the absence of advertising definitely can be felt, but the actual proactive like measurability of each particular ad dollar doesn't really exist for this one. So I'm not sure. And if Trump does lose, I don't think it will be because of money. But money doesn't hurt either.
Yeah. Let me, on the field program stuff, I think the best case you can make for it is that if you have people who you've identified as like, okay, these are people who will vote for me, but you need to get them to turn out. A field program can help to make sure you're banking those votes, you're getting the early votes in, you're encouraging people like, okay, today's election day, what's your plan? You need to get to the polls, how are you gonna do it? And it gives you a better sense of kind of where you are, because you are tracking all of these voters and having direct contact with them to know, okay, are they in our team? Are they on the other team? Have they voted? Have they not voted, et cetera? And so the research shows it can move races like a point. And hey, if you're talking about a really narrow election, it could end up making the difference, especially, maybe in North Carolina, where you have all of these voting issues now in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. Being able to make contact with these voters and encourage them to get to the polls, it can potentially make a difference. I am also very skeptical at how much the paid on TV advertisements. Consultants love them because that's where they make all their money. So the conventional wisdom about them really mattering has not been shaken because of how much money is being made on all of them. But at the presidential level in particular, I don't know, how much are people watching the TV and like really going, oh, that's a good point, now I'm gonna vote for Kamala Harris. It's just hard for me to imagine. Maybe it makes a difference, but it's difficult for me to see people really like making up their minds based on this like flood of advertising that's hitting them in the face every time that their favorite show goes to commercial break.
I agree. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment.